are audible now.
Hello.
Good afternoon, friends. We have assembled to participate in a discussion of significant importance, improving Indo-Pak relations. Mr. Kasuri, former Foreign Minister of Pakistan and one of the eminent peace activists of the subcontinent, has agreed to initiate the discussion. The idea is to identify not only the irritants, but also the role which we would like the two governments to play, and the role which the civil society in India and the civil society in Pakistan, as well as the media of the two countries, need to play to improve relations. Since there are a lot of friends who are keen to contribute, may I request each one to be as brief as possible, and please do not intervene when another speaker is speaking. May I request Kasuri Saab to initiate the discussion. Kasuri Saab.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, thank you very much, Mr. O.P. Shah, for organizing this webinar. I think we are meeting on a relatively more auspicious occasion. I remember the last ceasefire, it happened when I was foreign minister. That's 2003. And I was on the telephone, and my memory serves me right. Somebody suggested to me from another line, why don't you extend it to NJ 9842? I said I didn't have the authority. So they said, why don't you talk to the president's house? So I spoke, and they said, okay, go ahead. So I have a personal interest in the ceasefire that took place in 2003. I also felt that if our two countries had to take a new course, a new turn, we needed that ceasefire desperately. Now, similarly, the current ceasefire, I think, provides an opportunity for people like us who would like the subcontinent to be at peace so that we can concentrate our efforts on removal of poverty. And I am glad to see your faces, and I can hear your voices, and I'm happy that I can at last see Mr. O.P. Shah. Now, I've been asked to go into this. I'll just briefly touch in 2-3 minutes why this has happened. I think peace lovers on both sides already realized that they can forget the nuclear war. Even a conventional war between the two is not possible, because both countries have reached a certain level of equilibrium, and I don't wish to bore you with books which have been published on this issue. It's a disaster even to think of a conventional war, not to think of a nuclear war. But I think Prime Minister Modi seems to have changed his mind happily. Probably his very professional army generals have advised him also. And the changing international situation, particularly with the new administration in Washington, I think did play a very important role. I remember the last time, actually, when this started, there was a call from, can you hear me, Shah Sahab?
Yes, I can. Certainly.
Okay.
Everybody
you were gazing in a certain manner, so I thought maybe you couldn't. Okay. So the last time it happened, I remember the background, and I can only use my experience to try and guess what happened this time. I received a call from General Colin Powell, who was then Secretary of State, and he said, Khurshid, I said, yes, expect good news from India and be prepared to respond. We then, within a day or so, we heard Vajpayee Saab extend hand of friendship to Pakistan, and we embraced it immediately, and had advised the Prime Minister and the President, and Prime Minister Vajpayee was invited to come to Islamabad. The rest, they say, is history. And why did the Americans move? Well, Pakistan at that time a major non-NATO ally. Things have changed between Pakistan and the United States since then, but we still have normal good relations. They are not strategic relations as between India and the United States, and I don't have to explain to you the reasons why. All of you understand geopolitics probably better than I do. So, At that time, United States was very keen that Pakistan should focus its attention on Afghanistan and rather than be distracted on the India-Pakistan border. Now, probably similar things have happened, and we heard only the other day that, in fact, I have an exact quote. I got that quote. Ned Price, the State Department representative, almost admitted that he'd been urging, the State Department been urging Indian and Pakistani governments to go on a more peaceful course. I mean, I don't wish to misquote him, but there's no doubt. And then the recent developments, then Secretary of State Blinken's letter to President of Afghanistan, and the desire of the new administration to make sure that this dialogue between the Taliban and the Afghan government takes place has also played a role. And you all understand these. Whatever be the reasons, people like us would like to welcome that. And so what do I say? Where do we go from here? Because I don't monopolize all the time. I know there's so many speakers. So I think first thing, last time when we had this webinar, I said one of the things that was lacking in a situation like Indo-Pakistan prevailing at that time was that there was no back channel contact at all. Now, at least the Indian media is quite clear that there was some sort of a back channel contact. The government in Pakistan has said nothing on the subject. But anyway, I cannot believe that this could have happened without some back channel contact. And also the words used by the two DGMOs are not those that naturally occur to soldiers. Obviously, it's quite clear that when they talk of core concerns, India has its core concerns, Pakistan has its core concerns. Pakistan's core concern, of course, is Kashmir. India's core concern is terrorism. We all know that. And since this language was used, there's no doubt that this has the support at the highest level. So what do we need to do now? The first thing has happened, that some sort of a contact has taken place in the back channel. I think what we should do is encourage governments in both countries to allow more backtrack too also. And because I think there's no substitute for track 2, and particularly when I hope time is not far off when we can meet face to face with each other. And I have met Indian friends in third countries in the world, and even in the last 6-8 months. So that would be a good thing. Then trade was actually discontinued by India, or trade does continue probably through Dubai. But that was disconnected by India. Maybe the time has come that we should, maybe our diplomatic relations need to be raised to a higher level because they were downgraded. And then there are things, because civil society, media, I have suggested in the past that, in fact, for some of the think tanks, people who sponsor these think tanks, you spend so much money. Why don't you call media people from both countries rather than just calling politicians and generals and diplomats, retired diplomats, call them. I must express one thing, some of you may not like it, because since I'm interested in India-Pakistan peace, I have to follow Indian media, electronic and print. And electronic media in India is so much more hawkish, and this is not my view, these are views of independent observers. Hopefully that's going to change because media plays a very important role. So I have suggested to some NGOs who have been inviting us that spend half as much money on inviting media people from both the countries, and things might turn out to better. Now, another baby step could be religious tourism, because Prime Minister Modi may be interested, and this would be a good sort of a political statement from him, that Hindus in India could be encouraged to visit Katasraj temple, which was restored during our tenure, and I invited Mr. Advani at that time, then there's the Hinglaj temple also in Balochistan. And similarly, Muslims could be allowed to go to various shrines in India. So I think these are baby steps. And if there are more questions, I would like to respond in the end. Thank you very much for providing me with the initial opportunity.
Thank you very much, Kasuri Saab, so for your initial comments. We'll certainly like you to speak towards the end, respond to some of the comments made by the Indian participants. May I request Mr. Tariq Amin, he is a political leader from Jammu and Kashmir, to offer his comments in 4 minutes, and he will be followed by Mr. A.S. Dulat. Mr. Tariq Amin, please.
साहब, आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया कि आप हमें कभी कभार अपॉर्चुनिटी दिया करते हैं, एक दूसरे से बात करने का मौका देते हैं आप। और आज उर्से के बाद अमन की बात के कुछ उस पर हो रही है। काफी तरस रहे थे हम लोग कि कहीं से आवाज उभरे कि गोला बारूद को बंद करने का अमल शुरू हुआ। और मैं इस तजर्बे की बुनियाद पर कहूँगा कि जब ऐसा हुआ तो मैंने अपने कुछ दोस्तों के साथ राबिता कायम किया उन एरिया में। आप यकीन कर लीजिए, उन्हें यकीन नहीं आया क्या ऐसा भी मुमकिन है। और बार बार उन्होंने कहा क्या अब अगर ऐसा हुआ कितनी देर तक हमें गोला बारूद से निजात मिलेगी। ये सिर्फ पुंछ एरिया में नहीं, सांबा के इलाके में भी कुछ दोस्तों के साथ राबिता कायम किया, उन्हें बिल्कुल ही यकीन नहीं आया कि ऐसा भी मुमकिन है। जो लोग LOC के नजदीक इस तरफ या उस तरफ,
एक और
ये उनकी राय है। कसूरी साहब, अफगानिस्तान एक फैक्टर है, अमेरिकन ढांचे सांचे में सियासी क़यादत में तब्दीली एक और वजह हो सकती है, हो सकता है। लेकिन मैं एक चीज गुजारिश करना चाहता हूं। आज
मीटिंग
आवाज नहीं आ रही।
There are some voices in the background. While Tariq Amin Saab is speaking, voices are there.
हाँ, प्लीज बोलिए। आप आवाज आपकी नहीं आ रही थी अभी।
अब आ रही है ना?
हाँ, अब आ रही
है।
मैं ये गुजारिश करना चाहता था कि जो सरहद के LOC के नजदीक रहने वाले लोग हैं, उन्हें अब भी यकीन नहीं आता है कि क्या ऐसा हुआ या ये अमल जारी रहेगा आने वाले वक्त में। मैं एक बात फिर दोहराना चाहूंगा कि जहां तक हमारा खित्ता है, दो ममालिक के बीच में क्रॉस फायर पर लटका हुआ है, गोली उधर से इधर से, लेकिन भुगतना पड़ रहा है हमारे अवाम को। वाशिंगटन में तब्दीली या अफगानिस्तान में पीस प्रोसेस या चाइना एक फैक्टर हो सकता है। मैं सिर्फ ये गुजारिश करना चाहता हूं कसूरी साहब, मेरा यकीन है, मेरा तजुर्बा है, आप जब तक एक सस्टेन्ड मूवमेंट ग्रास रूट लेवल से ना उभरे दोनों ममालिक में, शायद कोई भी इनिशिएटिव सरकारों की तरफ से आर्जी ही साबित होगा। मैं नाउम्मीद नहीं हूं। मैं इस उम्मीद पर आज भी कायम हूं कि एक वक्त आएगा जबकि दोनों ममालिक के अवाम अपने फ्यूचर को आइडेंटिफाई कर लेंगे, एक दूसरे के साथ कोई एग्जिस्ट करने में, एक साथ मिलने वक्त आएगा। कितना लंबा सफर होगा मुझे मालूम नहीं। मुझे आज भी याद है जब आपके होते हुए एक कई इनिशिएटिव लिए गए, उस तरफ भी और इस तरफ भी, और यहाँ वर्चुअली एक फेस्टिविटी का मूड था जम्मू कश्मीर के अंदर, बल्कि लगातार यहाँ से आवाजें आ रही थी और रास्ते खोले जाए। अभी कश्मीर और जम्मू के दरमियान काफी गैप नजर आ रहा है, या गैप को पैदा किया जा रहा है, प्रमोट किया जा रहा है। लेकिन तब जब पीस अमल शुरू हुआ था वाजपेयी साहब के वक्त में, या वहां से मुशर्रफ साहब के वक्त में, या बाद में मनमोहन सिंह जी के वक्त में, उस वक्त यहां कशमकश थी। हर कम्युनिटी, हर रीजन, लद्दाख से लेकर जम्मू और जम्मू से लेकर कश्मीर की वादियों, हर एक अमन की बात कर रहा था और अमन की पेशरफ की दुआएं करते थे हमारे लोग। हर तरफ से यह आवाज आ रही थी, ले से भी और
आवाज बंद हो गई है।
तारिक आमी साहब, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है।
क्या आप आ रही है?
हाँ जी, बोलिए।
मेरा कहने का ये मतलब है कि जो सियासी तब्दीलियां कई बड़े ममालिक में, अमेरिका को लेकर, हमारे मुल्क में, पाकिस्तान में, इनका नतीजा ही है जो आम लोग भुगत रहे हैं। मुझे झिझक नहीं है ये कहने में। मुझे आज भी याद है कुलकर्णी साहब, वो वारदात जब आपका प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में कुछ लोगों ने एहतजाज किया, जिसका जिक्र अभी नकवी साहब ने डान में भी दोहराया। ऐसी कुव्वतों के साथ, ऐसी कुव्वतों को आइसोलेट करने के लिए, या उनके जो कैंपेन है टकराव की सियासत के, अगर उसके मद्दे मुकाबल अवामी आवाज ना उभरे दोनों ममालिक में, अमल को सस्टेन करना मुश्किल रहेगा। मेरी अपील है, अभी कसूरी साहब ने यहां मीडिया के बारे में कहा। आज साहब, मीडिया का हाल पाकिस्तान में पहले भी था, मालूम है हमें तब क्या था मीडिया का हाल और अब क्या। यहाँ हमारे लिए नई शुरुआत की है हमारे हाकिमों ने। आज मीडिया पर भी कदगन है, लगाम है। वो सब कुछ नहीं पेश किया जाता है जो हमारे अवाम के लिए, हमारे मुल्क के लिए जरूरी है और खित्ते में अमन कायम करने के लिए जरूरी है। मेरी राय में
प्लीज कंक्लूड
करना चाहूंगा, जो हम सब पीस एक्टिविस्ट बैठे हैं यहाँ, इस आवाज को हम पहुंचाए। एक, हम खुशामदीद करते हैं इन लम्हात का, ये गनीमत है हमारे लोगों के लिए सांस लेने का, लेकिन इसके साथ ही हमारी कोशिशें रहे ताकि इसको वुसअत दी जाए, इस प्रोसेस को, और इसको सस्टेनेबल बनाने के लिए ग्रास रूट लेवल पर भी आवाजें उभरनी चाहिए। ये मेरी अपील है।
थैंक यू वेरी मच। Thank you very much, Tariq Ami Saab. May I now request Mr. A.S. Tula to offer his comments. He will be followed by Professor Radha Kumar. Mr. A.S. Tula, please.
Thank you very much, Shah Saab. And after our former Foreign Minister of Pakistan has spoken, and after one of our foremost political leaders from Kashmir has spoken, there's very little for me to say. I'd just like to make a couple of points. But let me remind Tariq Ami Saab that before the 2003 ceasefire, at his request or his suggestion, there was a unilateral initiative from Delhi for a ceasefire during Ramzan in 2000. Because at that point of time, we had a prime minister who thought, who believed, and who had the imagination to think of peace and was determined to end this permanent madness, this permanent confrontation with Pakistan. Today, what has happened, this ceasefire, however it has happened, whether it is our initiative or a Pakistani initiative, or as Kashmir Saab has suggested, it is the Biden effect. But the ceasefire, I think, is a positive development, and it must be welcomed by all of us. For somebody like me, who's often referred to as a romantic or an optimist, I immediately reacted and I said this should open more doors for peace between India and Pakistan. And on the question of optimism, I think unless we are optimistic, I don't think there's much hope of moving forward. On a more realistic plane, when I sit down to think, the troubling factor is that the non-believers far outnumber the believers. The naysayers are much more. And no sooner was this ceasefire declared that there were people on our side who said this is a Pakistani trick. And then there are also some people who still believe that it's only a question of time and Pakistan will break up. On the Pakistani side, I know generals who think, and even today, that they have to settle scores for 71. Now, if we are thinking of settling scores for 71, then we can go back as far as 71. Then we can also go back as far as 47. And that brings me back again to Prime Minister Vajpayee. He had the imagination to take that bus to Lahore in February 99 and standing side by Mian Nawaz Sharif, he said in Lahore, कि हम जंग ना होने देंगे. Now, Kashmir Saab just mentioned, that war is not an option. And I think everybody understands that war is not an option. But it doesn't prevent people, the hardliners or the hawks from every now and then threatening that, war could happen. And or what would happen if there was another Balakot or another couple of surgical strikes, or a Mumbai were to happen again. So I think these are things which need to be kept in mind. I think the key is trust, which is lacking between our two countries. And something has to be done to try and repair and then build on that trust. Coming back to
please conclude.
Vajpayee's visit to Lahore, let's not forget that he also visited the Nishan-e-Pakistan and wrote in the visitor's book there that a strong, stable and prosperous Pakistan was in the interest of India. And I'm reminded that 4 or 5 years later, L.K. Advani, a former deputy prime minister, considered a hawk by many people, visited Karachi and visited the mausoleum of Jinnah and had very, very flattering words to say about the Qaid. So this is what we have in the past. But a point I would like to make here is that, for instance, Kashmir Saab mentioned, the initiative taken between Dr. Manmohan Singh and General Musharraf. I think it's a very sad reflection that large, huge window of opportunity in 2006-07 was wasted. At this point of time, I think the window of opportunity is much smaller, maybe just a peephole, because the two key players on the Pakistani side who we believe want peace, Prime Minister Imran Khan and General Bajwa.
Please conclude.
Both have less than 2 years left in their tenure. So what has to happen now. It cannot be postponed. Whatever positivity has to take place has to happen now. And finally, since you're asking me to conclude, and there are a lot of Kashmiri friends here, again, I think the key to the whole thing is Kashmir. There's no point talking about low-hanging fruits and minor things and this, that, because they won't happen without Kashmir, and they also don't mean much without Kashmir. So we need to settle Kashmir. And let me tell you, the reality of Kashmir today is that Pakistan, I'm sorry to say, is gradually out of that story there. It's a very shrinking constituency now. And while it still lasts, my appeal to the Pakistani side is that we need to cooperate on Kashmir. We need to think of Kashmir reasonably and to try and settle Kashmir. Interestingly, there is some talk in Kashmir now, and I'd like Kasuri Sahab to hear this, not that I believe it, but that the abrogation of Article 370 was mutually agreed upon by India and Pakistan. If that is so, then we are beginning to cooperate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Professor Radha, and then we have Shatindra Kulkarni after her. Radha ji, Professor, I know it's too big a punishment for a professor, but just in about 4 minutes so that others also get a chance. Professor Radha.
Now I have a challenge to try and keep it below 4 minutes, and I'm going to try hard. I'm not going to deal with analyzing why this ceasefire has happened and at this moment in time. I'd like to go straight away to what can we do. Ideally, governments ought to pick up peace processes from where they left off. Between 2003 and 2007, almost every important track of discussion and negotiation was established. The framework and the contours for a peace settlement were established. Sad to say, in both India and Pakistan, successor governments do not think ever of policies in a continuum that can be expanded and built upon. So our first task as individuals perhaps, or as groups, should be to emphasize that we will never reap the benefits of any peace process or any peace agreement until we establish this continuity where we build upon the ideas, the contours, and the framework that have been achieved previously. I can't emphasize that sufficiently. Without that, we keep returning to a zero-sum game. We keep going back to having to begin from the beginning. Now, that is not to say that politicians do not require to be given something unique of their own that they are contributing. If they wish to kind of project it as this entirely new thing that they're doing, that's fine. But the elements, the framework, the contours, the continuity must be maintained in whichever shape or form. Next, going to Mr. Dulat's point, yes, it's absolutely true that Jammu and Kashmir is the core. Okay, terrorism is another ancillary problem, I would say. Having said that, the situation of mistrust is perhaps greatest in Jammu and Kashmir. Whether our governments and our media and our other institutions of public discourse are concerned about that terrible trust deficit and how to repair it, I don't know. When we say that it should be repaired, I'm afraid that Mr. Tarigami's point about pressures on the media and the weakness now of our independent or autonomous organizations and institutions in both countries has grown immensely. So one of the other points that we will have to take on board is how can we try to at least begin to restore some degree of independence to the media, bringing them to meet each other. This is something that was, as Kasuri Saab, you will remember, it was a very important element of civil society interaction during the early years of the peace process, 2001, 2, 3, 4. You had joint media initiatives of every sort, but you had those because the two governments at that time were willing to encourage the media to start talking also about how reporting on conflict situations has to change, how reporting about positive steps toward peacemaking
Audio problem.
has to change. Sorry, you can't hear me?
No,
now
we can hear you.
Well, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So here I would say we have a huge stumbling block. Media is not independent in either of our countries anymore. So it may actually be that you will, that we would need to do a lot more internal writing, all of us, not just to publish in the media, but to bring out in the form of, online journals, whatever we like, dedicated to this issue of peacemaking between India and Pakistan. Then there may be some ability to get a small breakthrough going. On Kashmir, I would like to actually hear what all the Kashmiris have to say. This is a rare opportunity, Mr. Shah, that you have created in bringing this diverse group together. And so I won't take any more time. I just want to listen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. May I now request Sudhindra Kulkarni, and he will be followed by Kapil Kar. Sudhindra Kulkarni, please.
Pisha Saab, thank you so very much for organizing this discussion and for inviting me. I'm particularly happy because I'm seeing Kasuri Saab. Though virtually, it brings the same joy and the same hope to all of us. All of us agreed that the ceasefire agreement, though surprising, has been a very positive breakthrough. Now, there are many imponderables, there are many doubts whether it will hold, but our effort should be that even if there is no progress on other matters, even if India and Pakistan just keep the ceasefire agreement stable, it will be a big achievement in itself, because it will then create the atmosphere for addressing other issues. So, as Manishankar Iyer says again and again, this should continue without interruption of any kind, without any setback influencing it negatively. Dulat Saab made a very important point that we actually have a very small window of opportunity because on the Pakistan side, the Prime Minister and General Bajwa, who are totally committed to peace with India, have just about 2 years tenure left. And anything more to happen should happen in the next 2 years. Unfortunately, on the Indian side, by 22 end, India will go into election mode, and it's very difficult to think that our Prime Minister and the ruling party would do anything positive on peace with Pakistan. All of us know that anti-Muslim rhetoric, anti-Muslim politics, and anti-Pakistan politics, unfortunately, have got fused in the last 7 years. And it's very difficult to imagine that our Prime Minister will put peace with Pakistan ahead of all that he and his party have been espousing so far. So, how to get over this hurdle? It's not clear at all. Nevertheless, we must persevere. Now, it's interesting and revealing that the ceasefire agreement between the two militaries has also mentioned core concerns and core interests. And that could not have been possible without the two governments having something future in mind. Now, obviously, there are two things that the two sides can work on. One is core concern being Kashmir and terrorism, and also a common core concern is connectivity cooperation. You know, from the utterances and pronouncements from the Pakistani side, it seems that Pakistan is now giving a much higher priority to connectivity and economic cooperation. If that is so, it is certainly welcome, and that will create a positive momentum to what India and Pakistan can do together.
Please conclude.
Yeah, you know, on Kashmir, Dullah Saab made a very important point which should be discussed today, is that Pakistan's space in resolving the Kashmir issue is shrinking. It's, I don't know whether this point is adequately understood in Pakistan, because I have heard from some reliable sources that now Pakistan at the highest level considers that abrogation of 370 is an internal matter of India, and whether it remains or not does not concern Pakistan much. If this is so, then a good new opening can be possible in resolving the Kashmir issue. Now, lastly, I believe that the India-Pakistan issue on LOC, India-China issue on LAC, line of actual control, they are somehow linked, because India has now realized that all the bravado about two-front war, simultaneous two-front war, will not get us anywhere. A disengagement process has begun as far as China is concerned, and therefore, if we can think more comprehensively to bring India, China, Pakistan on the same table, I think that we will have many more good ideas to talk about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kulkarni Saab, Kapil Kak Saab, and then Dr. Naila Khan. Kapil Kak Saab.
Thank you very much, Opisha Saab. Very, very interesting points have been made earlier. I think one key point that's been made, and I'd like to comment here, is the ceasefire. It must hold. As long as there is political direction that that ceasefire has to hold from both sides, it will. We should be prepared for an occasional exchange of fire, but that doesn't lead to a kind of sequential kind of a movement forward in increasing violations. I don't think that will happen. My second point, I just run through 3 or 4 quick points, is that we did get the feeling, I mean, there are pointers in the media, whether it was Bajwa's statement in Risalpur, Naravane's statement that we will prevail over Pakistan in border peace, or overflight of Imran to Colombo, or a very, very positive resonance by the Pakistani representatives at the South Asia COVID-19 Management Virtual Conference. I think these pointers brought us to a situation to accept that this is not a surprise, that this was somewhat expected, and which is a good thing. The third point is, I think apparently from October onwards, October 20 onwards, the back channel has been very active. If we have reached where we have, it is because of the back channel. And so I think collectively, the 20-year experience we have had in India-Pakistan relations, which we can easily track, is that the back channel is the holy grail for any improvement, any breakthrough at any time. Whether it was Sati Lamba and Tariq Aziz, then Sati Lamba and Iftikhar Khan, I think now Doval and his counterpart and whosoever is doing talking, there is speculation that our NSA has even met Pakistani Army chief in a third country, but I'm not sure whether that's actually right. But the point I'm trying to make is keep the back channel going. And this is what I have been saying. The track to India-Pakistan has been active despite the famine in dialogue from 2016 onwards. I think that in a way it is an area which we must extend full support to. And I think Mr. Khurshid Kasuri also made that point that not just the back channel, but more importantly, civil society and the track to initiatives.
Please conclude.
We have to be careful about disruptors. Anytime India and Pakistan build bridges, the demolition experts are close at hand. I think both sides have to be very careful because we are not sure whether this ceasefire is the beginning of something bigger which is coming, or it's part of a one-off kind of a situation. That surety is not yet on the table. My other point here is that ceasefire must be in writing. In the last ceasefire, I'll take just 1 minute more. In the last ceasefire in 2003, that agreement took place in the midst of so much else had happened. That agreement was on 26th of November. Let's not forget Bajpayee's addressing the Kashmiris at the Amar Singh cricket ground on 18th of April. And in between, so much else happened. This time, there are no big ideas on the bilateral side. If they are, they're being discussed by the back channel. But this is the start point of a new kind of an era. We have to watch out, is it going to finish here or do we see something in the future? I'm not quite sure, as on the J&K issue, I'm not quite sure about the shrinking constituency of Pakistan. I'm not quite sure. Don't go along with that proposition. But I would like to, as a Kashmiri and a proud Kashmiri, put on the table that what the Kashmiris sent as a message to Pakistan, to India and the world through the District Development Council elections is that the idea of abrogation of 370, 35A, and whatever else followed is abhorrent to the Kashmiri. It's all in the electoral process, so we cannot disregard it. I think one concluding suggestion I would like to make is, let us to begin with start full restoration of the high commissions in the two countries. Nothing goes off. It's so many years now, we have truncated high commission. Because if we have anything by way of ideas to move forward, they've already been put forward here. I don't want to repeat them, whether it's people to people, media exchanges, student exchanges, or for that matter, trade and economic linkages. But most importantly, you must have the high commissions at full strength. We have also to see how the relations between India and Pakistan will pan out in the context of the sudden changes that have happened in the American approach to the resolution of Afghanistan issue. Let's not forget, there is always a linkage between Kashmir, Karachi, and Kabul. So I think if we put it all together, we will be wiser rather than just be unduly optimistic. Of course, I have great admiration for my friend Dulat Saab. Like him, I'm also very optimistic. But geopolitically, we have to consider the entirety rather than go by a one-off event.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Khan. Dr. Khan, a Kashmiri teaching in the United States and an author of a recent book on educational strategies for youth empowerment in conflict region. Dr. Khan, please.
Thank you very much, O.P. Shah Sahab. It's a pleasure to be here. It is early morning in America and evening in India, so it's an honor to be on your panel. Those of us who have deep-rooted faith in peaceful policies and programs welcome the recent ceasefire agreement between India and Pakistan. I have always maintained that the peace and prosperity of Jammu and Kashmir is inextricably wedded with the peace and prosperity of the millions in India and Pakistan. In spite of the physical delineation of boundaries, we all live in one zone. A strong and prosperous India is a guarantee to peace in our region, but a strong and prosperous Pakistan would strengthen that guarantee. So gloating over the instability in either one of these countries serves no purpose and proves detrimental to peace in our region. The goal should be to find a practical solution to the deadlock that would enable preservation of peace in the subcontinent while maintaining the honor of everyone concerned. Saber rattling by the representatives of India and Pakistan is futile, and there will be no headway until the process of political negotiations and accommodation begins. Given their interests in South Asia, Russia, China, the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union have expressed concern about the brinkmanship between India and Pakistan. India and Pakistan routinely brandish their nuclear capabilities to intimidate each other. The two countries have also resorted to direct nuclear signaling through ballistic missile tests. Such strategies emphasize the military and political volatility in the subcontinent. The impending menace of precipitative nuclearization has been one of the many factors underlining the necessity to maintain a quasi-stable regime in the South Asian region. In effect, one of the ramifications of India and Pakistan climbing the ladder of nuclear proliferation has been a shaky stability maintained amidst the continuing conflict in Kashmir. Instead of the display of bravado on either side of the line of control and tall claims to isolate nations, we must learn to cross the frontiers of culture, nationality, and language in order to make humanist responses to the belligerence of military powers. Ensuing human rights violations on either side of the line of control are incredibly painful. The two nation states of India and Pakistan must stop using the people of Kashmir as cannon fodder. Today, the United States needs Pakistan to facilitate negotiations with the Taliban in order to draw up a roadmap for peace and expedite the withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan. And with China heavily invested in CPEC, the bilateral project designed to improve infrastructure with Pakistan for more efficient trade with China, India's claims to isolate China don't make much sense. As long as India-Pakistan relations remain strained, not only will the solution of the Kashmir question recede further and further into the background, but even the fragile peace in the subcontinent will hang by a thin thread. Such a situation is obviously fraught with
Professor, please conclude.
consequences. Yes, please bear with me. Just a couple more points. Such a situation is obviously fraught with disastrous consequences, not only for India and Pakistan, but for the entire subcontinent. Everyone needs to be open to diplomacy and peaceful negotiations to further the India-Pakistan peace process. The aims of that process should be the phased withdrawal of forces from both sides of the line of control, the rehabilitation of detained prisoners, and repair of the frayed ethnic fabric in all parts of civil society. We have the resilience and the wherewithal to forge ahead without saber rattling. The state of Jammu and Kashmir, just my last point,
please,
my last
sentence.
The state of Jammu and Kashmir is so geographically located that it depends for its economic growth on an unhindered flow of trade to both India and Pakistan. Kashmiri arts and crafts have found flourishing markets in India for decades. At the same time, the rivers and roads of Kashmir stretch into Pakistan. Prior to 1947, Rawalpindi used to be Kashmir's railhead, and Kashmiri traders would use Karachi as the seaport for overseas trade. The welfare of the people of Jammu and Kashmir can be guaranteed by securing the goodwill of the political establishments of both India and Pakistan, and by the display of military discipline and efficiency at the borders. The role of the armed forces of a country, to the best of my knowledge, is national security, not national interest. And to conclude, O.P. Shah Sahab, the people of Jammu and Kashmir are very important stakeholders in the peace process. India and Pakistan cannot make decisions about the future of Jammu and Kashmir without taking our representatives into confidence. So please humanize the people of Jammu and Kashmir, recognize their stakes in the peace process, and we must talk about repairing the trust deficit within Kashmiri society. So to reiterate the point made by Kapil Kak Sahab, the restoration of Article 370, restoration of the autonomy of Jammu and Kashmir cannot be relegated to the background.
Thank you. Thank you very much. May I request Mr. Ashwani Kumar, and he will be followed by Dr. Ashraf. Ashwani Kumar ji.
Thank you very much, Shah Sahab. First of all, I extend my warm greetings on the occasion of Shivratri. at the very starting point, I would like to bring out one very important factor here. The dialogue is complete when all kinds of opinions are there. What I see here is 90%, 95% belonging to one school of thought. And those who are in majority in the government in India, I believe they have no kind of representation in this kind of a forum. In Kashmiri, we use a proverb that is known as Khatin Vatisman. It is discussion in the backyard of Khala Khatija, discussing things and making listen to each other without having a wider discussion with the people who actually matter. There, with regards to all of you who are here, all my good friends, but the fact of the matter is, these all good friends have no stake in the government at this time. Who matter? What matters is the people who are in the government, the people who influence the policy, the people who can build up a narrative and can implement that narrative. Unfortunately, most of us here are anti-BJP, anti-Modi, anti-India media, anti-NDA. This will not work, my dear sir. हम कितना ही अच्छा चाहें, लेकिन उस अच्छाई में सबको साथ नहीं, मुझे नहीं लगता हमारी अच्छाई का कोई वैल्यू होगा. यहाँ पर मुझे एक बात जरूरी नहीं है. Whatever we say, there is a doctrine that has been developed, nourished initially by the UPA. The doctrine was talks and terror will not go together. Over the last 6 years, we have not seen any kind of a leakage in that narrative. For Pakistan, I need to say, they will have to stop terrorism, cross-border terrorism and insurgency. Up to the time that doesn't happen, this military generals sitting together and talking in terms of peace will have political backing. And the thing that has political backing has no lasting value. And in the last, I will like to say, there are good people both in India and in Pakistan. Recently, I was following Pakistan media and I heard people of Pakistan saying, yes, we want comparatively Indian COVID vaccine. And it was an overwhelming opinion in Pakistan that yes, we want it. I do not want this kind of a notion to take place that whatever is Pakistan doing at this time is doing because they want COVID vaccination from India. They want help from India. And it may be because that whatever they are doing because of that. And at the same time, let me clarify, between India and Pakistan, people of Jammu and Kashmir have no role to play in the sense that some kind of a peace will be established necessarily by taking in people of Kashmir and people of Jammu and Kashmir into confidence. Whatever Pakistan and India are going to do bilaterally has the sanction of Shimla Agreement. They do not need to take anyone in confidence. If India and Pakistan want business, they can do without the people of India and Pakistan, because India and Pakistan are represented by their government. So there is no third party, and that has been the basic principle on which India and Pakistan relations are governed. And lastly, I will request that it is not good to be hot against the government, neither in India nor in Pakistan. We do not need to be hawkish against our government. We do not need to be hawkish against our media, and we not talk about those who want peace. But those who want peace should necessarily have backing of the government. Otherwise, it means the same thing, discussing things in the bathak of Khala Khatija. Thank you very much. So kind.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ashraf, please remember 4 minutes. He will be followed by Muzaffar Shah and Professor Wani. Dr. Ashraf, please. Dr. Ashraf.
I don't think he's here anymore.
He was here. He raised many times hand. Dr.
Yeah.
Ashraf.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Please. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Actually, since the day I got the invitation, I had an opportunity to talk and discuss the ceasefire announcement with many people here in Kashmir. And I am really happy that many people in the panel have asked to know what is the ground perception in Kashmir about the ceasefire announcement. In that connection, I don't want to go to the political aspects and the other aspects of the ceasefire announcement. Let me just talk to you what on the ground in Kashmir, the opinion about the socio-economic impact or the reasons of this announcement are. So I would just request to have patience and bear with me. Maybe I may take a little bit more time. So I just ask.
Please come to the point straight.
Yes. Let me make the opening statement like this. India and Pakistan ceasefire announcement can and actually should be seen on a bilateral, trilateral, and a multilateral context. Now, I'll just try to elaborate on this premise. Beginning from the First World War, if we just look and see at the Second World War, the American political and the economic power radiated to and across the maritime edges of Eurasian landmass. Now, even though the countries of this Eurasian landmass embarked on opposing historical development paths, all the same, Eurasian evolution into a supercontinent has unabatedly continued. Now, Western Europe and East Asia came to be viewed as natural extensions of this American power. Now, India always occupied and continues to occupy a unique position in the
background dialogue.
Everybody has to mute themselves.
We can't hear.
Mute your speakers.
Please, somebody
mute.
There is some telephone.
Go to my room.
Somebody is talking on telephone, please.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
Dr. Ashraf.
Okay, despite now, India has always occupied and continues to occupy a unique position in the power equation in the Eurasian supercontinent. Despite it being a part of the Western world order, being just sort of thought of, but it has hardly ever felt itself to be so. And in the new world order that China is ambitiously trying to build, India simply couldn't have felt at home. The misunderstanding or maybe hasty miscalculation by the Chinese foreign ministry, foreign policy apparatus turned out to be disastrous for Chinese ambitious project. Now, the Belt and Road Initiative, or the Chinese as they call it, One Belt, One Road, was originally devised to deal with the industrial overcapacity that plagued the Chinese economy with the potential to stall its growth alarmingly. Now, the Belt and Road initially included Calcutta, let's not forget that, as one of its main nodes. Now, thinking that India would happily play a participatory role in the Belt and Road, China didn't lay much stress on engaging with India initially. The result, India became a core critic of the Chinese economic expansion.
One more minute.
After the abrogation of 370, yes, sir. So I'm concluding. I'm just making it short. After the abrogation of Article 370, obviously China got an window of opportunity because China had heavily invested in Gilgit-Baltistan. It was a multi-billion-dollar project in Gilgit-Baltistan. But the hitch was that China had for a legal cover, which they could not get from the Pakistan government, because for Pakistan to give a legal cover to China, that meant that Gilgit-Baltistan should have been given a status of a full-fledged province. So when we talk about abrogation of 370, in that context, we can safely conclude that abrogation has opened a window of opportunity in the new world order. Now,
please.
something
ऑडियो म्यूट करें, से गुजारिश करें जरा.
Yes, there is some problem there.
मेन स्पीक की बात ही नहीं सुन रहे हैं.
नीना जी के फोन से डिस्कशन हो रहा है.
Anyway,
Dr. Sir.
Okay, let me conclude. There is some dialogue going on. So now here's the point I want to make simple. I want to conclude. I want to make a point. Now we have to understand, no country can ignore the truth that the globalized economy has transformed the world into an onion, where each layer that protects the next to it layer is actually protected by a preceding layer. Now, if COVID has emphasized one thing, then that is that our destinies are intertwined and interconnected. Now, we cannot escape the butterfly effect. The ceasefire announcement is only a step. The leap has to follow, and it will, whether you like it or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Muzaffar Shah Sahab, I have a request. Somebody is... Please don't use your mic.
Please,
somebody else is speaking.
Please ask the gentleman to mute his mic.
Nobody should intervene during the discussion.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
Just 4 minutes.
Right from Kasuri Sahab to Dulat Sahab to Radha Kumar ji, अपने कपिल साहब, मैं करता हूँ चिंता धीरज रखिए भाई साहब. सुनिए आप, बात सिर्फ एक है, इंडो पाक रिलेशन पे बात हो रही है, इम्प्रूविंग. Let's come to the point straight away. As till this process from the DGMS level is not raised to every level, whether it is back channel, whether any stakeholders, government, these trade, any civil societies, it doesn't hold good. And I would like to straight away answer my very dear friend Ashwani ji, who has just spoken, and I appreciate his point. I do appreciate his point very much, Shah Sahab, and one has to take care of these things, that the next level, when we are meeting on such a very vast platform that we have today, from Pakistan right to this country, we need to get some more voices which are from the government, and we would like to take those people. We would like to discuss with them, talk with them, take them head on. They can take us head on, no problem. That should be a point which should be made in this forum today, that we should have much more voices from the governmental side. Now, second point is that we have talked about that bilaterally India and Pakistan can take care of Kashmir. Well, I'm sorry, they have not been able to take care of Kashmir bilaterally for the last 72 years. Unless you don't have the people of India, Pakistan on the both sides of line of control, unless they are not on this page with the governments of India and Pakistan, and you do not take,
excuse me, sir,
and you do not take the principal sufferers of this dispute.
Excuse me, sir. There are some background talks going on. We are not able to hear the speaker, main speaker. There are some background talks going on.
Muzaffar Shah Sahab,
you have to mute everybody.
में जो आपने कहा उसको रीड करें, please.
क्या साहब आप जो
intervene मत
स्पीकर
करिए।
हैं जो ये
हाँ।
बात कर रहे हैं कहीं पर उनको म्यूट कीजिए ना आप प्लीज.
It's creating a lot of disturbance. There's no point.
चलिए,
Check it out and mute the person.
हाँ चलिए आप प्लीज करिए.
It's not. Yeah.
And
That's
if he
okay.
does not get
आप
muted,
ही
please
उनको
check him
mute
out of the
करिए।
conference.
हाँ बोलिए, आपकी आवाज सुनाई दे रही है.
What I am saying as a responsible political person from the state, and in this particular conference, we have two very important members from the PAGD, that is Tarigami Saab and myself. Two major persons of the 6-member Apex committee here. What Tarigami Saab has said is very, very right. My peace is so fragile that one shot at the borders and see what happens there on both sides, whether it is the Pakistan side or it is from this side, our side. And the process till it does not go to the highest levels, well, we have had these problems and these problems will continue. So unless what I was trying to say when we got again disturbed by the speaker is that till we do not have both, the people of Jammu and Kashmir, they are the principal sufferers of this dispute.
What are you doing? I want to hear him.
They are the
I
principal
can't hear him at all. What have we done?
Please
Can we
continue.
hear now?
Yeah,
You hear
please
now?
continue. हाँ
Okay.
बोलिए.
Till you do not
Now
have
stop it.
the principal, we do not have the principal sufferers of the dispute as the stakeholders, as the main stakeholders also there. India and Pakistan peace talks have given us nothing. We have had enough of declarations, right from Tashkent down to Shimla and down to Lahore, everything. It was done with good faith, sure, but without the people of Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, and that means all the region Jammu is consulted, Kashmir, and
I can't hear him.
Yeah, I also.
No audio.
There is something wrong with this.
It's raining
Network
heavily
problem.
here in Kashmir, so we have an interruption with the internet.
Muzaffar Shah Sahab.
Okay. Now,
Yeah,
now
last point.
So, I would really suggest what Kasuri Saab has also said. Definitely, yes. Third world meetings, yes. But we should try with both the governments of India and Pakistan that we should meet in Pakistan. We should meet in India. And we should finally meet in Kashmir. That is the crux of this matter. That is my point, sir, today, that we should make bridges so well and so hard that they don't collapse, that we can travel to Pakistan, they can travel to India, and all of them can travel to Kashmir. And this matter, as Dulat Saab said very clearly, this is the core matter. The core matter has to be resolved. There is no other way. And I remember very well, I will tell you one more thing, sir, very interesting, Shah Saab, which is history. And Sudhender Kulkarni will bear me out. When Vajpayee ji went to Srinagar, fortunately that day I was giving the final touches to the Indo-Pak dialogue between two Kashmirs, what my late father had envisaged. And we were trying to do things about that. And I had come to seek his help on that for the visas and all. And Vajpayee ji was going to Srinagar. And he wanted to know something because he was very poetic in nature. Some good share which would start his speech in Srinagar. And I suggested, Waloho Bhagavano Nau Baharuk Shan Paidakar. Do you remember Kulkarni Saab? Khalan Bulbul Gatkaran, Kilan Gul Gatkaran Bulbul, Sui Saman Paidakar. It was done there. That is the spirit that has to be done today again. And Kashmir needs to be treated with kid gloves.
Thank you.
It does not need to be treated with guns. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Vani and then Professor Sushil. Professor Vani, please. Is Professor GM Vani around? Professor Vani, Sushil ji, is Sushil ji around?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm there.
Yeah, please.
I just take 2 minutes. I'm hearing
very
you.
kind of you.
What is missing as a stakeholder in the peace process between Pakistan and India is the business of the two countries. Okay. When Europeans killed each other for 50 years, they formed a community, what was called the European Community for Steel and Coal, which became later European Union. And the idea was that once you integrate the two economies, a war becomes so much more difficult. We have had a clash with China on the border. The trade with China did not stop a single day because about 1/3 of India's factories would come to a halt because our trade is more than $150 billion both ways trade. Our trade with Pakistan and other neighbors in South Asia, we are the least integrated part of the global economy because countries trade with their neighbors more than they trade with countries far away. And this is the missing link, I think.
His voice has disappeared. We can't hear him.
Yeah. Same thing with me.
Okay.
Sushil ji,
sorry. I'm sorry. I was saying that what is missing is the businessmen in the two sides, the trade, because European Union used the trade to make sure there is no war after that. They formed the community of European Community for Coal and Steel in the 50s, which later became European Union. Despite a clash on Ladakh border with China, our trade with China did not stop because it would mean large-scale unemployment in India. Many of our factories depend on inputs from China. That South Asia is the least integrated part of the global economy. We have no trade with Pakistan. Okay, and unless this is substantial, unless there are stakeholders on both sides who want permanent peace, this will just having peace mix like you and me talk about, having some academics talk about it. We need more stakeholders in this, and the real stakeholders are the business community and people whose jobs depend on that trade. That is the missing link in this whole equation. Thank you.
Thank you. Vatali Saab, and then Mr.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I have been waiting for your call. Thank you very much for calling me. At the very outset, I wish happy Herath to our friends here on the panel, particularly Dr. Ashwani Changu Saab, Kapil Kak Saab, definitely. So, sir, before I start, I would like to revert to the ceasefire agreement, which has been concluded by the two countries on 25th February. This is nothing new. It is only reiterating some past agreements. I quote, both sides agreed for strict observance of all agreements, understandings, and ceasefire agreements and understands and firing along line of control and other factors with effect from so and so. The joint statement is therefore not a new thing, but it is only an old wine in new bottle. Sir, you don't hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes, please continue. Yeah.
Okay. Continue. Regretfully, I may say all such commitments made in the past have been violated with impunity. There is no inbuilt mechanism either it is only a routine thing like a flag meeting or a revival of hotline. Another thing which is bothering me is that there is no enthusiasm. Political corridors of both the countries about this agreement, as if nothing has happened. Though something important has happened, agreement has the ceasefire line agreement has been just celebrated, particularly by the people on the borders. But both governments have taken it in a very routine matter, which doesn't augur well with the future of this agreement. Another thing which the DGMOs agreed was to address one another's core issues and concerns which have propensity to lead to the violence. If you interpret it in a broader spectrum, core issue and concern, core issue means Kashmir issue. And in case you interpret it in a narrower manner, it is only core issues pertaining to SOC or a border. But they have accepted certain core issues in this manner. Unfortunately, February ceasefire agreement is not designed to give any relief to the people living in the troubled valley. I humbly suggest Government of India that a general amnesty and unilateral ceasefire may be announced, which will facilitate meaningful reconciliation, rehabilitation of gun-wielding Kashmiri youth. This will surely help in restoration of peace and progress in the hinterland. Pakistan too has to play a very important role in strengthening this agreement if they want. All extremist groups and non-state actors operating on its soil who have in the past accepted responsibility for serious terror attacks in the valley have to be contained and controlled so that none of their cadres dare even to approach the ceasefire line, not to say of crossing it. Unless that is done, probably this agreement will not hold. Both countries are aware there's a very great danger to this agreement is from the media of the both countries. Because our media is more loyal than the king on both sides. Sometimes they are floating false news, which may aggravate situation on the ceasefire line, and there will be an accident, there will be a firing, and no flag meeting or no hotline will help. So therefore, I humbly say that all these channels should be controlled and they should not be allowed to express venom against either of the countries. Even now, these channels are not quiet and they are trying to provoke situations. I don't know under at whose instance.
Please conclude.
I am just concluding. Those CBMs, etc., which have been snapped in the past, like free travel between line of actual control and trade, may be restored immediately. And as a goodwill gesture, deputation of Kashmiri Pandits may be allowed to visit Sharda, a shrine which they have been pleading for the last so many years. Permanent ceasefire on the CFL is a far cry, unless and until there is final settlement of question of Jammu and Kashmir. Some of the panelists were of the opinion here that the people of the state do not matter when they discuss Kashmir. Are we cattle to be sold here or there? They have an opinion. Our autonomy is lost. There is demand for certain rights across the border also. So what settlement will not be durable? Any settlement between India and Pakistan, which does not address basic aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, which has been now reduced to only one thing, that they should be given maximum autonomy on both sides of the divide, not only on one side. On both sides of the divide, in Pakistani Jammu and Kashmir, all the regions, and in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, in which we live. So without that, there will be no peace, I can assure you.
Thank you.
Hey, just a minute, sir.
Sorry, Shah Sahab, I couldn't get the name of the last gentleman. What was the name of the last gentleman?
I am A.M. Vatali, sir.
He's a very important author.
I am A.M. Vatali, Ali Muhammad Vatali from Srinagar, Kashmir.
Patalvi.
Vatali. W-A-T-A-L-Y.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Khazuria Sahab,
I'm expecting clarification on these issues from Mr. Kasuri, if he doesn't mind his mind.
ID Khazuria Sahab.
And I hope, sir, before
Khazuria.
I hope that next time, when the COVID will be having COVID-free world, all of us will be invited by Kasuri Sahab to Pakistan to pursue our peace agenda. Thank you very much.
ID Khazuria Sahab.
Thank you, all respected participants in this webinar. Being a citizen of Sahel, I want to submit my few lines. Jammu Kashmir is passing through the most critical phase of history. For India and Pakistan, choice is very clear: conciliation and development, or confrontation and destabilization. What today everyone knows that principal focus of India-Pakistan rivalry is and have since these two countries origin when the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. Mostly all rational forces and peace activists all over the world want resumption of India-Pakistan dialogue and peace process. Main feature of our interdependent world is the country's mutual trade, which demands politics of peace and coexistence with behavior, attitude, and mindsets of tolerance among all diverse identities and regions and nations, etc. Coming to the respective Indian and Pakistani response to world demand for the resumption of India-Pakistan peace process, both took positive position and we welcome this. This means that future of India and Pakistan, also of South Asia, will determine as to how the JK issue resolved with the consent of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. As long as JK continues to be boiled, India, Pakistan, and other South Asian countries cannot live in peace. India, Pak should lead this perspective. War is suicidal for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Khazuria Sahab.
Opisha Sahab.
Just
one point for
yes,
Mr. Kasuri.
Please.
Because he's noting something important on Kashmir. Kasuri Sahab, one thing very, very clear from Kashmir is that 370 and 35A is non-negotiable.
Is not appreciated.
Thank you very much. Can we now request Kasuri Sahab to respond to the comments that have been raised, or is there anyone who would like to speak for half a minute or a minute or a minute and a half? Is there anyone?
Yeah, name of the last gentleman, please.
I'll be Khazuria.
I'll add only one word that
Manjeet Singh Khera for Chandigarh.
I would just like to suggest that in any next discussion, we must associate some non-governmental BJP people so that we hear their point of view also and what they have to say on the issues involved.
We welcome that. Anytime, any place, anywhere. Right from Nagpur to anywhere. We are
Thank
ready.
you.
Anytime, it will be very nice.
Allowed to speak.
Anybody else?
Opi Shah Sahab, can I say something real quick?
Half a minute, yeah.
All right, so India is a federal country. The Constitution of India recognizes the autonomy of its federating units. The ideology of one political party does not supersede the Constitution, right? And elected representatives have their authority. They represent their constituencies. Those elected representatives cannot be reduced to nobodies. when it comes to the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, the people of Jammu and Kashmir are principal stakeholders. There is no way around that.
Thank you.
And that was recognized in, real quick, Shah Saab, that was recognized in 1953 when two elected prime ministers, Jawaharlal Nehru and Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah, signed the Delhi Agreement of 1953. That was one sliver of hope.
That time has gone. That time has gone.
Thank you. May I now request Kasuri Saab to offer his comments. Kasuri Saab.
Thank you very much, Shah Saab, for providing me the opportunity of listening to your distinguished panel. I will try and pick up a few things, but before I pick those up, some of the questions that were raised, I'd like to suggest to all of you that the SAARC conference has not been held for quite a few years. I always find it very strange that India is prepared to meet Pakistan at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, where China is the largest and the most powerful country, but is shy of interacting under the auspices of SAARC, where India is the largest country and its economy is larger than all the others put together. So that has always amazed me. But anyway, that aside, I think we should put our weight behind SAARC's meeting being held. We need to talk of connectivity. The whole world is talking of connectivity. We must take the first step. After all, when the SAARC meetings were being held, a new dynamic had actually happened, and I actually mentioned it in my book. And what was the new dynamic? The new dynamic was that, there were quite a few agenda items under the SAARC conference, and people were regularly meeting in one country or the other on one issue or another. And in fact, there was a spate of news items all over the SAARC. All the countries in the SAARC were reporting their activities. That itself created a new dynamic of rationality, normalization. So I think we must try, whatever our influence be, that SAARC should be revived. That's one thing. And before I address individual issues, and there were so many speakers, I don't know who to address first. Let me take the first issue, and that is Jammu and Kashmir, the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Quite a few speakers have stressed on the centrality of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Of course, they are the principal stakeholders. And whatever we had achieved under the so-called 4-point formula, which I would prefer to call Musharraf Manmohan Singh formula, and since it had started under BJP's tenure, I could probably extend it in order to increase the number of supporters and say that it could be by a stretch called Musharraf Manmohan Singh Vajpayee formula. I was lucky enough to have interacted both with Prime Minister Vajpayee and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. So I think as far as Kashmiris are concerned, there's no question. And how are we able to arrive at that 4-point formula is, I think, it's a misnomer. I have referred to about 11 or 12 points, which are very important. But since it's become known as the 4-point formula, people here have talked of self-governance. That was included. Some people have mentioned of the need for equal autonomy on both sides. I entirely agree. The principles, anyway, are the Kashmiris. And we could not have arrived at that agreement. And I was interacting with Kashmiris in Pakistan, in India, and also in third countries of the world. And I knew exactly what the Kashmiris wanted, because I was absolutely certain that if whatever agreement we arrived at, if it did not have the people of the support of the Kashmiris, the people of Pakistan would reject it. So I take that instead of, because almost every single speaker has spoken of the need for recognizing the centrality of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. I think this goes without saying. There will never be a settlement between Pakistan and India unless the people of Kashmir agree to it. The solution, which I had referred to in my book, is a win-win. Something which the people of Jammu and Kashmir reflects the aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and which the governments and people of Pakistan and India also accept or can live with. But there is no question of imposing a solution, and they are the principal parties, regardless of what we may say that, UN Security Council resolutions recognized only 2 parties, Simla Agreement recognized only 2 parties. But the facts are Kashmiris have suffered so much that the situation on the ground would warrant their being included as the principal party. And the Indian governments, both Vajpayee Saab's government and Manmohan Singh Saab's government, recognize that fact. Then we talk of the need. Please. Then we talk whether, I don't know what the gentleman is saying.
No, please continue. Please continue.
Can you forget Kashmir, sir? Kasuri Saab, can you forget Kashmir? That will be. Can you forget Kashmir issue?
Please continue.
What was he saying? Can we?
Please continue.
Unfortunately, you are living in past.
No, but I would like to hear what he said. Can we do what to Kashmir?
Forget.
He says, can we forget Kashmir?
Yes.
Okay.
For all practical purposes.
Why have we gone to war so many times? I have listed 10 occasions on which we either went to war or we were near a war. The last time being, well, I don't want to even mention. We fought so many times, and even if you wanted, you could not forget Kashmir. So, in fact, your government realized that
needs to forget.
Your government recognized that Kashmir cannot be forgotten. There has to be a settlement. Now, what the terms of the settlement are, as I said, it has to be win-win for all the parties concerned. That's one thing. So many speakers refer to a very small window of opportunity. I agree that the window of opportunity is small, but the fact that the ceasefire has taken place, and some speakers said that they were not very hopeful because the internal dynamics of India's politics, where there was a lot of anti-Muslim and anti-Pakistani sentiment. Well, I don't wish to comment on that, but after all, this ceasefire could not have taken place if the government of India had not wanted it. So it has occurred with their concurrence. So let us therefore assume the best rather than the worst. So let's assume that the government of India has also reached this conclusion after a great deal of thought. And I don't want to refer to the reasons. I've already indicated some of the reasons earlier on. If there anything in particular that you would like me to address, but I feel this window of opportunity must not be allowed to go waste. Now, how can that be done? First of all, I think we need to hold out hope. Now, how do you hold out hope? People at least sitting here, and I think it was Professor, Radha Kumar who said, when you start with something, you go back to where you had reached. So I think you can hold out hope by telling the people of Pakistan and India that they are not so incompetent, the representatives and governments are not so incompetent that they cannot arrive at any solution bilaterally. And after all, what had happened between 2003 and 2007 was arrived at bilaterally. So we can hold out hope by referring to that agreement. Of course, I understand that new governments, new actors on the ground, they would like to put their own stamp on it by all means. But I've thought a great deal about it, and I think you have also. Whatever the agreement was, it recognized the interests of Kashmiris, Pakistanis, and Indians. So I don't think you can improve upon it by all means. After all, it took 3 years. The brain power of Pakistani and Indian diplomacy was involved in it. It was involved in the back channel. the two foreign offices were involved, and I'm sure they've thought of everything that could have been thought of. If somebody feels they can improve on it, of course, there was a provision for revisiting it for at the end of 15 years, roughly. So it's not been, it doesn't mean that you can't think about it again, but you will have to start from somewhere. I know it's unrealistic at the moment, and but you know, you have to be an optimist, because if you don't start with a degree of optimism, there will be nowhere. And the first thing is, before you achieve anything great, you have to dream about it. If you don't even dream about things, there's nowhere you will get. I'd like to dream about it, and I have seen impossible become possible. I've talked to the top Indian leadership. I have known that in private they said to me, let us resolve this issue between ourselves. So I don't think it's impossible. After all, Prime Minister Vajpayee had come here, and then we know the progress that was made. And Mr. Vajpayee was a BJP Prime Minister. Then even Mr. Prime Minister Modi did come to Lahore. Why it didn't happen, I don't want to go into it, because that will take a long time in explaining what happened in Kabul and what happened in Lahore, but and what happened in Dhaka earlier. That will take us nowhere. But at least the fact that he came here meant that he also felt there was a need to resolve issues between Pakistan and India. And we need to take the baby steps. The baby steps, I thought, could be which obviously even the government of India could live with. For example, as I said, religious tourism is very, very non-controversial. Hindu temples in Sindh, in Punjab, in Balochistan, and Muslims being allowed to go there. Let's take some steps, followed by trade and some others. But liberal visa regime will encourage people on both sides to think in positive terms. This was at least what I had felt during our tenure. Our side, can you hear me? Because
yes,
all the pictures have disappeared.
No.
Yes,
please.
Hear?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you,
You
sir.
can hear. So I think we need a more liberal visa regime. Let me say that the government of Pakistan is more liberal in granting visas. So people like you should use your influence that at least a people-to-people contact is allowed. And if visas are issued, some people expressed a desire to meet people face-to-face. Of course, there is no substitute for people meeting face-to-face. I'm prepared to answer any specific question through you, Mr. Shah, because I just don't wish to go on rambling on.
Sir, can you
Thank you very much. I think it has been a very interesting and thought-provoking evening.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Shah, can I make one suggestion?
Yeah, please, please.
I think that we should think, perhaps you and Mr. Kasuri, would it be possible for us, for example, to issue a statement welcoming the ceasefire and hoping for next steps? They can be the baby steps that Mr. Kasuri has suggested, or we can all write into you with suggestions for next steps. But let us try to think about concrete things that we can not only suggest, but also that we can ourselves undertake. I mean, if we are all people who write, let us start to write a series of articles welcoming the ceasefire, suggesting ways to restore a peace process. I only feel that when you have brought such a large number of very good people together, we should try to get some concrete outcomes out of it. So that's my
very good suggestion indeed.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Sir, Shah Saab, just ask Kasuri Saab, can Pakistan stop militancy?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. I would like to answer that question, whoever asked. The question was, can Pakistan stop militancy? Look at the world media.
To be very
right. Today, the West is supporting India against China. So look at the Western media, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, the Sunday Times, the Telegraph, or whatever, or European newspapers. They are saying what's happening in Kashmir, what happened in Kashmir is being done by Kashmiris. So if the people of Kashmir are happy, Pakistan can do nothing.
Kasuri Saab, I have a little bit of suggestion. We Indians do not go by the Western media. We continue guided by our own principle. So Western media say it hardly affects and it doesn't impact our policies. I will request you, while going through this passage, let us concentrate Indo-Pak relations. That would be better than to go by the advice of the West. They have been always exploiters and they are usually seeing why and how they should create trouble in India and Pakistan relations. I request you not to be go by the advice of Western.
Thank you, Ashwani Kumarji. Anybody else?
Sir, can I ask a personal question?
No, it has to be very specific, no more. Anything very specific. Yes, Doctor. Dr. Ashraf.
Oh, thank you very much. Sir, I would like to ask Kasuri Saab, how does he relate the whole thing, ceasefire, with the new world order that China is pushing through?
Well, I don't know what you have in mind, but let me respond. First of all, I'll tell you my experience as foreign minister. Although the things have changed now, even between China and India, the Chinese never advised us to have hostile relations with India. China has had and is increasing the level of trade between the two countries. It suited both the countries to increase their trade relations. And I think I have recently read that the government of India is actually reversing some of the steps it had taken against certain Chinese companies, purely for its business interests. So China has never advised Pakistan, but yes, certain actions did happen. Lots of people, yes, that provides me with an opportunity of referring to Article 370. Let me make Pakistan's position clear, because there's some misunderstanding. I think Mr. Dullat said that they felt that both the governments of Pakistan and India had agreed to Article 370's abrogation. Now, I don't know where he heard that. All you have to do is to look at the statements of all the officials of the government of Pakistan and India at that time, and you will get the answer. But what is the official position? And then we can go on and understand what Pakistan's position. Official position is, Government of India says its case rests on the Maharaja acceding to India. We question even that accession, but forget about it. We rest our case on United Nations Security Council resolutions. Despite that, what has happened over the years is both Pakistan and India have spoken to each other on different platforms, starting with Pandit Nehru, and then going on to BJP, Congress governments, so many people, they have spoken on Kashmir, they have come forward with various suggestions. So the government of Pakistan's official position is, it rests on UN Security Council resolutions, although we have always said, we are prepared to go 2 steps if India takes 1 step, we need a settlement of Kashmir. So the 4-point solution, or the framework with which the BJP and the Congress governments and our government, of which I was foreign minister, had produced a framework, would reflect our thinking. But when Article 370 was abrogated, regardless of our position on United Nations Security Council resolutions and on 370, because we thought 370 originally was India's matter, but the way it was done, we regarded as an attack on the dignity and the identity of the people of Kashmir. The Kashmiris reacted to it, against it, and we also did. So there's no question about it by saying that Islamabad agreed to abrogation of Article 370. With great respect to Mr. Dulat, I don't know if he seriously suggested that, but we are basically interested in resolving the issue with the government of India. It's Prime Minister Modi today, and I'm glad.
How do I
that,
unmute it? And my video is also finished.
Thank you.
Hurry up.
Friends,
For that man stop. I'm not leaving. Why are you leaving?
Thank you.
I want to talk. Oh, you don't know anything.
I'm trying to.
Thank you.
It's a picture.
Friends, it has been a very...
Oh God, Nina is speaking. Hello.
Can I...
Hello. Where's my voice?
No,
Hello,
please.
Shah.
Please. Can
Can I ask them one question?
I was just wanting to say one thing. Hello. It augurs very well. In 2022, we shall have a new dispensation of a new army general and a new head of government in Pakistan. So maybe we should look forward to start new innings with those two.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Yes. I can't see Kasuri Saab. Are you there?
Yes, I am there.
Yeah. Can we now conclude? Can we say that we had a very useful evening?
Yes, we can say that.
May I, on behalf of everyone, thank Kasuri Saab for his interest and involvement in this meeting. It's a beginning always.
Thank you.
I hope we will continue these meetings. And I would like to thank each one of you for your presence and contribution. I'm sorry if I was not able to give enough time to some of the speakers. I hope they will forgive me. Friends, thank you very much. And we meet soon again on a similar occasion. And I think we should keep in mind this excellent suggestion which has come from Professor Radha Kumar.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And hope to see you soon. Thank you.
By the way, Kasuri Saab, excuse me, sir. One minute. Kasuri Saab.
Now it's over. It's over.
No, it's over. Just Kasuri Saab, it's not. I just asked him one information. His book is not available on the Amazon Inn. I was looking for that. Is there any other way for his book
Well, I'm
to
surprised.
be procured?
You're saying it's not available.
Oh, it's not on
I'll find
Amazon.
out. I'm surprised. You're saying it's not available on Amazon.
There's an old copy. There's an old copy available there. So could you please just look into the matter so that we...
Okay, I'll try and do.
Because I've been looking for your book for a long time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Couldn't see my face.
Dr. Radha Kumar has made a very good suggestion about people writing about it. She's an author and she's a scholar. I suggest that she writes something about the period 2005-2007, when both countries made a lot of progress that will raise hopes of the people of Pakistan and India.
Thank you.